live stream first because it takes a little bit longer. And starting the webinar. Waiting for the live stream. There it goes.
Wait
Here we go.
for it.
Got it?
We go. We are go.
Here we go.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to today's Hackin Cast with Stephen Spence. We are super
Welcome to
excited.
pre-show banner. This is
Yeah,
not
oh
the
yeah, guys,
actual
yeah.
Oh yeah.
presentation.
So we show up early, you show up early, you show up early, we show up early. Anyway,
It's a cycle that we all love and that we just
I don't know if we
can't
love
stop
it or
doing.
not, but
We do love it. I love it. It's like we get to like talk to each other and get to meet people. It feels almost like being with people, which we haven't done in so long, it feels like. But we will be doing it soon, coming up at Way West. So we should definitely talk about that. That's going to be super, super, super exciting. So
well, we should talk about that, but I want to make some introductions.
yes, please.
First of all, I want to say thanks to Stephen for coming on today and being part of Pre-Banter and doing this Hackin Cast for us. Stephen had submitted a CFP to Deadwood in 2021, and although we had just a mound of CFPs come through, and this one scored really high. And so I wanted to invite Stephen on to do a Wild West Hackin Cast, even though wasn't chosen for Deadwood. We wanted him to come on and do a Hackin Cast with us. So thank you, Stephen. We're super excited to have you with us. And I know you're coming in from Germany, Stuttgart, right?
Yes. Thank you very much for having me. And this is actually, since the other conference would have been remote as well, this is actually pretty cool because now I'm not competing with other speakers and the other tracks. So cool. I'm very appreciative for the opportunity.
True.
Much bigger audience.
I also wanted to introduce Laura. Laura is not new to Black Hills and Wild West and Anti-Siphon, but she is joining our team in the capacity of marketing. So we're super excited to have her join us. You want to wave there, Laura? Say hello.
Hey, everyone. I mean, I barely have a voice, so bear with me. My asthma is crazy right now with the weather in South Dakota. We have hot, cold, like right now it's 70 degrees, but not too long ago it was in the like single digits and negatives. So this is, the way I sound is because of the crazy weather happening in South Dakota. So it's kind of like my weatherman. When my voice starts to go bye-bye, I know the weather's gonna change. So
yeah, like some people go by their knees and their backs, you go by your voice.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm excited to join the team, and I've actually worked with Black Hills Information Security, and now venturing into a section that I really like to do is marketing and get my feet wet with everything. So I'm excited. Derek Banks probably knows me, and I wear a lot of hats. So yeah, this is gonna be cool. I'm excited getting to know, and Stephen, you're my first person that I'm on a webcast. So this is great, like sweet.
Yes, I'm so excited.
It's very good, and we're excited to have you on here, Laura. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for agreeing to be part of our team. So you'll be seeing much more of Laura as the days wear on. The other one I wanted to introduce was Mr. Banks, Mr. Derek Banks. Derek and I have known each other for quite a while now, and in a previous life. And now we work together here at Black Hills and Wild West and Anti-Siphon. And Derek has a new training class, and we're super excited about it. It's coming up not next week, but the week after, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You want to tell us a little bit about it?
So do you want me to talk about it now, or do you want me to talk about it later?
now and then would be great.
Okay. Now and later, whenever. I guess pre-show banter doesn't really have a set schedule, right? If you see me keep looking over to the left, it's because I live in an XKCD comic where if you ever seen the one with all the different chat clients, so at the moment I have to have Slack and Teams and anyway, Discord when I'm video sharing with all these apps like just doesn't behave. So I have it on another machine over here. So I keep looking to see.
Yeah, rip to your computer.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? The computer has 40 gig of RAM and i7 in it. And I don't know. Go figure. I think I probably just need to ditch a chat client or two, right? But no, the class. So the class is called Incident Response Foundations. And so my idea is a lot of the times when we do incident response, when we go into a company and they've hired us to do incident response, we find that they don't have a lot of a program in place. Like they don't have the right policies and procedures in place. They don't have the right logging in place, which is super common, right? And so this is still a 1-day course, spread over 2 days, 2 4-hour sessions where we'll talk about how do you get an incident response program stood up? Like, what do you need to do in your organization to get the right things in place and a framework for the right types of logging in place? So it's not meant to be really an analysis class. Those are like follow-on classes, right? These are like the foundations that you need to stand up an incident response program. So we'll talk about endpoint logging, network logging, what you need to do for your cloud assets, policies and procedures, and I even give a sample policy and procedure. It's actually an IR handbook as part of the class. Mm-hmm. So I think that's about it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I posted a link in the chat for everyone to go on and check it out. So that's cool.
And I also pinned it, so it is in the pin section. If you'd like to learn more about Derek's upcoming class, we're love to have you come and join us. It's going to be an awesome class.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. It's been fun putting the material together and kind of seeing how it's came together. And it's actually changed a little bit over the iterations. At first, I really wasn't going to have a whole lot of like lab material because it's only a day long. But then, with recent events in the world, I'm with John Strand. I firmly believe we need more folks doing information security. And so this is hopefully a bridge between John's and the others, like, pay what you can SOC courses and the intro stuff. This is still an intro class, right? It's not going to be heavy technical like material and like wizardry and stuff. This is how you get things together, right? And then to feed into some of the other more advanced classes like the network forensics class and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I went ahead and dropped a link to our training calendar for the other classes that are coming up. We definitely have a really awesome lineup coming up. Next week we'll have advanced endpoint investigation with Alyssa Torres. There's also advanced network threat hunting with Chris Brenton. And then the following week, we'll have John's SOC core skills class in the intro to social engineering, incident response with Derek's class, incident response foundation. So we have a lot of really cool classes coming up. So it's pretty exciting. So I went ahead and put a note at the training calendar in Discord for anybody. Can we talk about Way West now?
Sure, go for it.
So I'm so excited about it because I get to see you guys in person. I'm so excited. Last time we were at Way West, 4 of us got trapped in an airport together. So we just, it was like being on Survivor. So we all bonded a lot more than we probably should have in such a short span of time. But it was so fun. And I'm looking so forward to getting back and seeing everybody in person. So that's all I wanted to say about it.
But there is a lot of fun. Way West will be great. Derek, have you been at every single Way West? I know Laura has, right?
I was actually thinking, wow, it's hybrid. Maybe I can actually see stuff this time. I have not been to any of the Way West. I've been to all of the in-person Deadwood events. So yeah, I haven't made it to any of the Reno, or did we ever have one in San Diego? So
not a hybrid, not yet.
Yeah, so for the foreseeable future, school year travel is really difficult to deal with because it's not just school, it's also athletics, right?
Yeah.
And I swear, like most of my life now is getting one kid from point A to point B. So,
It's so awesome when they can start riding with their friends and stuff.
oh, I
Oh
know,
my gosh.
right?
It
So
is like
Or
a
driving.
dream.
my 14-year-old, we got 2 years till she's 16, and we're already like, should we get her a car? Should we just hand her down one that we have and get a new one?
Get her like a Suburban.
But yeah, I've already told her, well, if we have a golden minivan, which she's like, I'm not driving that thing, right? Which I love the golden minivan. It's one of the best vehicles we've ever had because you can do almost anything with it besides like picking up mulch, right? I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff with it, but she's like adamant. And I'm like, well, you can fit a bunch of your friends in it. She's like, still no. So she wants an old Jeep Wrangler, not like unreliable, but like, a restored old Jeep Wrangler. Like, oh, really? Okay. Me too.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you tell her she better start saving?
Yeah, right. Well,
Yeah,
definitely going to get her a
insurance is
car
the killer.
just for that because she was swimming on the high school swim team and they practiced before school this year. So I got to get up at 4:45 and get her to practice. That was great. So yeah, I can't wait for her to drive so she can do that and then take her daughter, her sister places, right?
Yes.
Yeah, my oldest is 18, and when she was 16, I bought her a car, and she still does not have her driver's license. So for
Oh.
2 years, she's had the car sitting out. She refused to get her driver's license.
Dude, you should really talk to Troy Wojowoda. You'll have like a lot of stuff to talk about in that. He's got the same kind of thing going on. He's like, I don't understand. Because
Yeah.
when I was 16,
I just don't get it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
my
got a
oldest-
car. I was
I don't
gone.
understand it.
Hell yeah.
I have a friend whose daughter doesn't want to learn how to drive either.
Yeah.
She's a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what my daughter is. She's 18. She graduates this year, so she's got like 2 months of school left, and still doesn't have her driver's license. I finally convinced her this year to go get her driver's permit, and so
That's
she
like a
has
life
that.
skill.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't get it. Like at 15, I was taking my parents' car and I was driving around and I was gone. Like I didn't want to be home.
At 15 and a half, I was getting a job so I could save up money so I could get a car. And,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, we're getting a car as soon as we can. Right. And it's one of those generational things that I don't know that I'll ever understand. Same thing with watching people play video games. Like, I don't understand. Like,
Well, it's probably because our parents just said no, like, we're not taking you. Like, there was not a choice. We weren't given a choice of like, oh, can you take me and drop me off here? My parents were like, I can drop you off, but you're getting a ride home because we're not coming back out. Like there was no choices as kids for me anyway. I don't know if it was the same for y'all.
Oh yeah. My parents, I remember when I was in the 7th grade and I wanted a pair of the original Jordans. Yes, I'm that old, right? But they were $100 tennis shoes at the time, right? And my parents were like, not only no, but hell no. If you want to get a pair of Jordans, you better find $100 somewhere. So I mowed grass all summer so I could.
Yeah.
But those are the kinds of things that I learned, right? Like my kids have no idea.
No clue.
Well, in all
Our
fairness,
friends-
our generation did watch people fish on TV quite a bit. And then after that, it's watching people play poker on TV. I've never really gotten any of that, including the watching people play video games. But I think it goes back a few generations of that kind of, why is this attractive?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Or the whole thing of reality TV shows. Like I like to fish a lot, but I don't watch people fish. Same thing with video games, though.
Right.
So how about DIY? Do you watch DIY TV at all?
But you learn things from that. Well, if it's like
Correct. So
DIY YouTube channels and
What I've
stuff.
seen is DIY is like watching video games, right?
For adults.
It's the adult version.
And
I'm guilty of that.
Trip
Like,
around it.
I harass my kids about watching video games, but I watch the DIY stuff. So I've given up on that argument.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It's fair. So probably more so until I started doing things on my house. And it's like, I don't want to watch people do this. So but I will YouTube how to do something for sure.
Yeah. YouTube is like aces. I mean, you can find anything and everything on there to figure out. Like my hot water heater broke and it's a tankless hot water heater. So we found a YouTube video and found the exact parts because they were like, no, we've got to replace it. And it was going to be like way more expensive. And the parts were only like a couple $100. I mean, YouTube is awesome, but yeah, DIY TV is way more fun to watch than actually do the projects at home. That's just not fun. I don't care. Like it's hard. I don't really, I used to watch HGTV like all the time. And then I actually started doing said projects and I was like, ew, this is just not it. It's a lot of work.
They never end at my house.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Case in
I
point.
don't think it ever ends in anyone's house, really. There's always something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Oh, are you putting in wood flooring, Jake?
Yeah, I've gotten this far.
Nice. It's all good.
Nailed it.
Fantastic, Jake.
I'm about to tackle our master bathroom as soon as the master's program is over. And
Oh.
I completely so it's the shower pan, the original one that's in there in the 70s when they built the house is leaking. So I have to take it out anyway, right? So that's gonna be my weekends moving forward. And you would think, man, that sounds like a terrible weekend. At this point, anything that gets me away from the computer, like I did yard work 2 weeks ago for like an entire Sunday. It's the best Sunday I've ever had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I've got
is
my
to step away, definitely.
yeah, my buddies, we do a lot of gaming and I run a gaming community outside of work. And like just this last week, I've been not even there. Like I finish up work and as soon as I finish up work, I'm like, well, I'm out, peace. And I just get off the computer and, go spend time with the family and get outside in the sun. And I'm like, man, I miss this, but it
Yeah.
is warming up. So I can start riding my motorcycle again. So
Yeah.
I just gotta get it running again.
Yeah. That's pretty paramount in the whole riding of the motorcycle. You do
Right.
It does have to run.
Yes.
Sit on it and
yes.
make sounds.
I actually did that yesterday because I went out there to the garage and I was moving stuff around so that I could actually work on it. So I sat on it and tried to start it and it just went, it does when a battery's dead. And I was like, nope. So I was sitting there, vroom, vroom, vroom,
You're funny.
just
Well,
trying to
I
make
do
myself
have
feel
a
like I was
question.
riding.
I do have a question of the day.
Oh, okay.
Nearly 20%, nearly 20% of people say they do what at the dinner table? And let's keep it clean, folks.
Put their elbows on the counter.
That would not be the answer.
Okay.
What
Look at their
about
phone.
it's only 20%? I was going to say be on their phone, but that
Fart.
is probably
We have sleep and fart. Look at a smart tablet. Pray.
Work.
Eat.
Yeah. Only 20% eat at the table.
Yes.
That's kind
That
of
could
part
be
of the
true.
answer.
That could be true.
Yes, Maxwell, it is part of the answer is eat, but not the full answer. Place a paper
eat
towel.
dessert.
Again, keep it clean, people.
Eat dessert.
Eat fast.
Eat as a family is an interesting one. But not
Has
the
to do with
answer.
eating.
Eat.
Eat
Eat
alone.
an appetizer.
Eat while watching TV.
Yes.
Eat breakfast.
Eat alone. Oh gosh, it's rain.
That's what the couch is for, right? Eat anything.
Yeah.
Oh, love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah, I have an open floor plan, so my table, like, you can see the TV and everything, and so.
Or eat with your hands. Keep guessing. Keep guessing.
20, only 20%. That just doesn't seem like it's that high. So
Right.
coming from the person that can get the wrong answer on calculators.
Eat with their words. Eat their own words.
Eat their own words. Yeah, that's a good one. I do that quite a bit.
Sit down.
Humble pie. Yes.
I love it.
Eat vegetables.
The crow. You guys are close with the eating thing. It's
Eat
just 20%.
bread. No, bread's got to be a high one.
And it's not
20% of people say they always do what at the dinner table?
Eat
And
slow.
it's not dessert. Eat dessert.
No, eat home cooking. It's not that. Eat dessert before dinner. I like that. I like the way you think. uh, it's a good thing.
Keep it totally cleared off except for eating. That sounds like it'd be less than 20% though.
Yeah, but Stephen, you're in Germany. The food there has got to be amazing. I mean, I've been to Germany several times, and I love the food in Germany.
If you like German food, it's amazing. But
with that caveat,
the palate is definitely, if you like spicy food, it's hard to find spicy food here. If you like Mexican food, it's almost impossible to find Mexican food here. So yeah,
I would probably really
there's
like
definitely
it.
good variety.
In Germany, they just call it food.
Yeah.
Yes, true, Eric G.
Tio Supremo said, chew their food 20 times.
That's not the answer.
Yeah, you just scooch the junk to the other side to eat. I do the same thing, Wallace. I definitely have, and I usually, my middle son, he gets so offended because I always, his spot at his designated spot at the table is usually where all of my stuff is. And he's like, you know, like you always put it in my spot. So I always have junk on my table.
Eat something new is kind of getting towards our answer, just to give you a little hint.
Try new recipes. No.
Eat takeout, no. Eat with their hands, no.
I do that anyway, regardless of where I'm at.
Food that they cooked themselves?
No. Try food from the other person.
That was going to be my next thought. It's like eat off of somebody else's plate.
Eat others' food.
Man. Yeah, people get stabbed with my fork if they try that.
Yeah. I always make my kids try stuff and they get really mad.
I was gonna say you might pull back a nub, right?
Yeah.
Joey doesn't share food. I know what 20% of people don't have enough to eat, and that
I'm sure that
That's true.
Number is probably higher than
probably, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Eat leftovers. So let's just say let me try to give you a hint. You have a plate of food, right? You have mashed potatoes, you have roast beef, you have corn, you have...
Is the corn mixed with the potatoes?
Mix their food together.
Okay, so hold on. If it's roast beef and mashed potatoes and corn,
Derek,
I mix it all together anyway.
Eat the food one at a time.
That's the answer.
Yay!
Oh, wow.
That was hard.
That's the
Yay,
answer. 20% of people say they eat one item at a time.
So 20% of those who took the survey were 14 years and younger.
I was gonna say, I thought that 20% of everybody was really weird, but
yeah,
I'm just
got to keep them separated.
No, you're right, Derek. It's about 20 people, 20%. Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm hungry now.
I've been hungry.
So that's the one drawback about being on the East Coast with these webcasts, right?
Yeah, they're right at lunchtime.
Right through all of lunch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
My kids used to be that way though. They used to have to keep their stuff separated. If they're meat, the separated plates.
Yeah, I had the little separated, almost like a tray.
I had to buy those because if their corn got in their potatoes, holy cow. I'm like, what?
So good though.
I know.
Right? Like
So
that's how I grew up. When my parents made my plate as a kid, it was potatoes and then corn on top of it. You didn't have a choice. That's just how it was.
Does a salad make these people like their minds explode?
Probably. They have it all separate. It's like a salad bar, their plate. They take one little bits of each. That's funny.
He said on 5 minutes to the top of the hour here. And Derek, do you want to just talk one more time about your training class that's coming up?
Oh, sure. Let's see if I can say the same thing that I said last time.
But better.
Do it the same, but better this time. So the training class is coming up. It's called Incident Response Foundations, and it's a lot of the times when we do incident response for companies, we find that we're not prepared adequately to do any kind of response. They don't have the right network monitoring in place or logging endpoints in place or any kind of capabilities, for O365 or M365 and cloud. And they don't really have an incident response program. So this is a day-long course to show you how to stand up an incident response program, like what you need to do, the frameworks you need to put in place, what kind of logging you need to get a foundation to do incident response. And even if you're not going to do it yourself, or you're going to call in help, third-party help, it'll be very appreciative if you have some of these things in place. Also, things like what do you do if logging fails, if something was bypassed on an endpoint, or as a lot of people probably know, if your logging agent fails or something fails and you have to reach out and touch a workstation, like how do you even do that? Like, what do you do? What do you need to have in place? And so it's supposed to, as the title describes, the foundation for performing incident response.
Did you see the question Tio Supremo asked, how can he make a case to his manager so that the company will pay? Like, what can he go back to his company with and say, in order for them to support him taking the class?
Sure. So, I mean, I don't know what your incident response program looks like, but if you're in process of getting, policies and procedures in place, if you have no management backing, like that's one thing that I point out in the class, right? If you've really been fighting for why you need to monitor the network at all, well, this will give you the reasons why and what you should do. And it's not one of the it's not like a tool survey class where we're going to talk about all these kinds of different tools and how you're going, what you can do with them, and then a lab on Netcat or something like that. It's not that. I'll explain to you what I've seen to work and what I think would be the best choice for, especially for like small and medium-sized businesses, and how you can how you can put things in place to where if something happens, you will know the answer. So if management asks at the end of an incident, was any data exfiltrated, you'll have that kind of data already. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. And there's actually people in the chat are giving him some good ideas as well, which is super cool. So we just, our community is just amazing. I mean, they really step up and help each other. We could not do it without all of the help we get from our community. So it's,
and I want to make sure that people understand we provide quality training at an affordable price. That's what Anti-Siphon is all about. So, I mean, Derek's in the field, right? You're working on this stuff. He knows. I mean, he knows what's trending. He knows what's happening.
Well, I know what works and don't work, and I can see what companies aren't doing. And a lot of times it's just the third-party consultant effect too. Like we come in and we say, "Hey, y'all should have been doing this," and they look over at the people who've been asking for it for years, and they're like, "Why didn't you say something?" But we did.
Yeah. So. Right.
So it's basically the prerequisite to have everything in place before the bad day really begins.
Right.
So that you can do the things you need to do on the bad day.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be a bridge in between, or I'm shooting for a bridge in between our intro classes and some of the more advanced classes. Because at the moment we have intro classes and we have really advanced classes, and this is hopefully a bridge in how you get down that road so you can do that advanced analysis.
Well, with that, it looks like we're right up at the top of the hour. So we will turn it over to Mr. Spence, and we'll all be around probably in the background to jump back on at the end to help you close out. But
Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to your talk, and thanks to everybody online and our great pre-show banter people. So.
Yes,
before I sign off, I want to say that this webcast is being live streamed on YouTube, and it's also where you're going to be able to watch it later to find the recording. I dropped the link in the Zoom chat. We can also drop it in Discord. And that's it for me.
Okay.
All right, I'll see if I can successfully grab the screen here. And okay, just real quick confirmation. Good on seeing the actual
Yep.
slides and not the notes.
We can see it.
Perfect. All right. So that was actually a nice warm up into the slides here, because what Derek was talking about with the training that he's going to put on is, I touch on that in here as well, with as far as that being a need to make sure you've got set up correctly. So the title of this is, it's Groundhog Day again, the cybersecurity loop. Let's see. Yes, this is going to work. Cool. So requisite bio. I've loved computers and figuring how things work since I was a kid. My grandfather gave me an Apple IIe and when they were popular, and that kind of shows you my age. And I vaguely remember him sitting beside me and going through like, the kind of use case books that came with those, like programming and logo. So that was kind of my start. And I've been, pretty much going, with technology ever since then. I love figuring out how things work. So I've wandered the IT field professionally for around 20 years, doing all sorts of different of the subdisciplines. And they, everything from certification and accreditation to software assurance, software development, configuration management, more recently into SOC analysis and SOC operations management. And taking a step over to now go back to being a SOC analyst again, because I love the hands-on work and I love finding the bad. So it's kind of my background. That's why I'm kind of looking at the whole idea of the Groundhog Day kind of thing. I'm fortunate enough to have a wife and 2 dogs to remind me there's more to life than just technology. And the pictures are of our dogs, Duncan and Stilgar. They're Aussies, or Australian Shepherds. Also, the font that I use in these slides is, I'm going to mispronounce this, Consulis, since you can tell there's a difference between an uppercase and a lowercase I and an L. My middle name starts with an I, and due to terrible fonts throughout the years, I have aliases on my credit reports and on my security clearance paperwork, even though I have never pretended to be Stephen L. Spence. So just a little bit of a rant, but moving on. So Groundhog Day. What is Groundhog Day? It's a movie from 1993 that is, I guess it's classified as a American fantasy comedy. And it's starring Bill Murray, where he relives the same day over and over again. And I think the internet has defined it as somewhere between 30 and 40 years that he experiences in just the same day over and over. At first, he's bitter, he's frustrated, he does all sorts of crazy things. But as time goes on, he learns to see the repetition as a blessing, and he attempts to make life better for other people around him. And cyber defenders also live this cycle, where the first time you see something, it's new and complicated. But then as time goes on, you get many more chances to basically repeat that same scenario. And you get better and better at, at figuring out how to handle it. So that's kind of the basis for this. And yes, the dogs do have Fremen names because I have blue-eyed Aussies. So yes, reading the chat as well. All right, so just 2 common views of cybersecurity. For outsiders and a lot of technology insiders, there's thoughts that this is something that only experts can explain. And it's something that it's an arms race of attacker versus defender tools. All the news hype and everything makes it sound like every single compromise is something completely new and it's done in a completely different way than the one before. At least that's the perception that I get off of the common kind of coverage from it. And it's very off-putting for people who don't understand it, and they think that there's just nothing that they can do. On top of that, we are our own worst enemies within the community and in the industry, because we redefine terms every few years, give everything all sorts of new jargon, even if there was a perfectly good term that already existed. And so from a defender's point of view, over the years, the view is that we keep buying or that companies, organizations keep buying tools to avoid the cost of supporting people because people are expensive. You go through the cycles and they go, well, we don't have to have this department if we just buy this tool. And it never works out well. We also see commonly an adversary exploiting something that there were CVEs out for years, and there was a patch made available many years ago in some cases, and that's very frustrating. And the common thing of, when you figure out what the initial point of entry was, and you just kind of do a face palm of how was that exposed to the internet? And it's something that we see over and over. And it's, I believe that it has a lot to do with making the information and the knowledge so complicated by throwing out new frameworks and new lexicons every few years. It's a challenge. So let's see, next one. Yes, to go the correct direction. Okay, so we're going to break this down today, looking at what are the basics that are most commonly observed when it comes to things like initial access and discovery, and show some easy detection approaches. Since detection is like watching a train wreck without protection, which IPS, IDS, so you need the protective capabilities to be able to prevent things. So I'll also go over some of the best practices for making sure that you can actually stop the thing rather than just watch it happen. Data strategy has been a part of things like disaster recovery and contingency plans for years, but I kind of want to address the data strategy a little bit by itself. And then finally, no talk can be done at a high level without talking about people. So that's kind of the breakdown of what we're going to cover. So, and I'm going to leave room for questions at the end, at least, yes. So, okay. Every time I read about a new amazing campaign where an attacker was able to do something really creative, the first thing I always want to know is, how did they get in? I am often disappointed. I went out to grab images and references for this talk because, as you heard Velda say in the beginning, this was something I proposed, maybe 9-10 months ago. And so I wanted to make sure that I had some current references. And like, the worst way to write a paper in the world is to write your paper and then find the references to back it up. But that's kind of what I did. And it turns out that they magically all said everything I thought they were going to say. No shocks there. So I found there was actually something that was published, I think it was March 7th. I got very lucky there. And the DFA report, they ended up pulling together a year 2021 in review, and it pretty much grabbed all of the metrics that I was looking for all in one place. So you'll see a lot of references to that one. So there are exceptions, but when it comes down to these compromises, the vast majority come down to these categories here. And that's a user, which is the kind of the inside out, clicking on something that they, wish they hadn't, whether that's in an email or by compromised infrastructure or like a watering hole type account or type attack. It's the user's action. That's kind of the big category. And like I said, the two things are emails and something with an external site. And then the other three I've got in here really fall into the what is exposed to the internet. And we still got web servers. If you can RDP into remote desktop into into an enclave that maybe you shouldn't be able to, or that's just really not a best practice, it still happens very frequently. And then obviously VPN vulnerabilities have been the thing for a few years, and it doesn't look like they're going away anytime soon. And then, so then we've got categorizing supply chain gets back into the hobby of taxonomy. And taxonomy is that hobby of a lot of cyber professionals to want to categorize and bucketize things. So instead of just getting into semantics, it's the boogeyman, and it's probably fodder for one of these talks all by itself. But either way, these are the kind of paradigms that we were looking at 10, 15, 20 years ago, and we're still looking at today. There's, with very few exceptions, this still, any year, that's what this looks like. So in a quote down here I've got from that same DFA report, sounds like it could be describing 2012. In the majority of intrusions, the malware was distributed in the form of non-targeted phishing, such as mass malware spam campaigns. That, what year do you think that describes? And the reason that it happens this way is that it still works. Even if you get a 0.5% click rate, when it comes to things like ransomware, it's still very lucrative. So let's look at basically breaking down what are we seeing and what do we need to do about it? It comes down to, a lot of it is simplifying your stuff. And that's, if you're not using it, you don't plan on using it anytime soon, remove it, uninstall it, get rid of it. Because, we're pack rats by nature, especially technology. And especially if we think that we've got our own lab, we don't get rid of anything. And if you've got public facing infrastructure, that's a very bad habit. Do you really need 5 different browsers? And I will admit, some networks are so messed up that you have to play browser roulette. And hey, this only works on this browser, this only works on this browser. That's kind of indicative of other problems that should probably be worked through and solved. But if your network is not that bad, then cutting down on the number of tools, as long as again, everything is about making sure that you support your operations, whatever they are, whatever the main purpose of the business is. I'm not saying anything that would be detrimental or degrading that capability, but in general, a lot of times we overdo it with what's installed. So it's then, do you know what stuff you have? Software and hardware list. Most training, cyber training that's been out there for years harps on this, and it's still true. What is in your software and your hardware list? Do you know what you've got installed? Do you know what hardware you have? And it's something that's extremely important. So when the Log4j fund came out, it was a lot easier for anybody who knew what their hardware and software list was, because the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, they had a GitHub repo, and they had a list of hundreds and hundreds of entries, and it's still out there, for what's vulnerable and is there a patch available yet. And it was awesome. So if you didn't need to do all these vulnerability scans on your enclave, you could just take that hardware and software list and compare it to what was already there, and you at least have a starting point. Obviously, there's a 100% solution out there, but that's an 80% solution that could get people really far really fast. But they had to have that hardware software list first. So that's what I'm talking about, is do you know what stuff you have? And then getting rid of stuff when you should. As I mentioned earlier, if you've stopped using a capability and you left it on, installed, especially on things like web servers, then, public facing infrastructure, then you're asking for it. And also what falls into that is out processing people and getting rid of accounts, making sure that you don't leave them there, because you're a lot less likely not to catch. But when an attacker grabs an account that is not being used for anything else, unless you have a really good defender that knows what baseline behavior is and is familiar with the accounts, it starts becoming like a bit comical. But we still see it. We still see people, like old accounts that are still sitting out there, especially privileged accounts. And then, when they get popped, it's like, why weren't they disabled? Why weren't they removed? And that's, it's a tenet of basics, but it's still out there. And then let's see what we got next. So do you know how your stuff talks to other stuff? This is really ports, protocols, services, just running an Nmap scan from outside of the enclave, outside of the network, to check your assumptions. Because there's one thing about something being documented that way, and there's another thing of what the reality is. And every once in a while, doing a check to see what is publicly exposed is easy to do. It's using open source tools like Nmap that are, I think most of this, I would bet that at least 50% of the people watching this right now live have used Nmap and are at least familiar with it at a basic level. And that's all the level you need to do things like what services, what are the open ports, things like that. And that's something that if you don't think that this is a big deal, check out Showdown and some of these other tools and start looking at how many public facing domain controllers, print servers, SQL databases that you see out there. It's still a problem, and it's still a big problem. And we kind of, gloss over that when we assume that anybody has done a level of best practice. And that's definitely something not to assume. Always, always verify that. So in a previous Wild West Hackin' Fest webcast, it was mentioned like to get Zeek stood up, even if you're not using it. And I 100% agree with that. And basic log collection also falls into this. So what Derek was saying before I started this presentation about the training that he's doing sounds like it fits right with the statement of be set up for success. Have Zeek, have basic logs already being forwarded so that when your bad day happens, you have the ability to look backwards. You have the ability to hunt, even if you have to bring in, third-party help. There's data there for them to use, because if you're not forwarding the logs into somewhere where they can be collected, if you don't already have that, by the time you put it in place, you still don't know what the past was before it was ever implemented. And in many cases, it's when did the compromise happen? And you can actually have a better chance of answering that if you're already set up for success. So you might not be able to make out the tools and the commands in this image because there's a lot in here, but you can check out the report, the URLs on the bottom of the image there. And the vast majority of these entries look like last year and the year before and 5 years ago and so on. And even if there's commands in this list that you don't recognize, how many do you recognize? And there's a lot in here that if you've done any kind of Windows administration or just any kind of IT work at all, you go, oh yeah, I've used that. And so that's why I keep saying that none of this is new under the sun, at least not recently when it comes to the entire picture. And again, the most common persistence commands, command line, scheduled task creation. That's a lot less common in things that I've seen. It's more likely when scheduled tasks are put there, there's GPOs, it's the GUI that's doing it. It's not a command line invocation through a script. But it does happen. Admins do need to do it. So you always have to baseline it against authorized behavior, things like that. But it's still pretty easy. What about regadd? Using a run key. I think the very first training class I ever took for penetration testing talked about getting persistence with a run key. Yeah, that was at least more than a few years ago. And it's still like, this is 2021, and this report's saying that this was one of the most common persistence mechanisms in 2021. So, that's why, these things, being able to detect these things and to watch when they happen, it's fairly easy to, in most places, it's fairly easy to exclude expected behavior. And then the third thing is, hey, look, I'd never seen, what is AnyDesk? I see that into this, in this report. Well, I looked at it, and how did the AnyDesk get there? There was a cradle, and in that cradle, the cradle's a one-liner that will download a file. And sure enough, hey, there's using PowerShell to download a file. You can see that mentioned in tons of other webcasts from Wild West Hackin' Fest, Black Hills, like tipping sacred cash cows, I think it is. All those old videos, there's many mentions of this exact PowerShell line. And, even if it's, I think it's 4104 is script lock logging, have that turned on. You can catch it both in script lock logging and in process creates. So either way, most of the time when you see this line, it's very rare for this to be something that's expected. And again, if it is expected, you ask the questions, you figure that out, and you can baseline that out. Also in this report, Cobalt Strike is still widely used. And yes, Cobalt Strike has been updated. It behaves differently. You can customize the mess out of it. But most advanced actors aren't customizing it to the degree beyond what can be detected. It's the choosing what processes they're going to inject into, what are the names of the pipes, what are the names of the things. It's still, when it comes down to it, it should be trivial for us now to detect Cobalt Strike. I know that there's a lot of stealth tools out there. There's a lot of things out there that don't fit in this paradigm, but that's not what we're seeing when it comes to nation state actors and commodity malware. It's things like really badass pen testers, like a lot of y'all that are looking at this right now, that know how to be stealthy. But advanced adversaries don't need to be, because what they're doing still works. So the discovery commands, this is the piece that has changed the least since classes were first put together to train penetration testing and defense. And when Microsoft started putting out guides on what logs you should connect and things you should look for, this is a very long time ago. And our industry's gotten really good, our community has, but yet we still see the same things. And there's some very creative discovery types out there, like I was saying, like the best penetration testers out there can totally enumerate an environment without using a single one of these commands. But again, that's not what we're seeing in commodity malware and a lot of the malware campaigns in the last ever. They don't, because again, they don't need to be. They keep using it because it works. And by the time they're detected, their objective has been reached. Many of these commands are used by common tools such as Nessus, Cisco AnyConnect for VPNs, ServiceNow. There's all sorts of stuff out there that does enumeration. But baselining for most of these is fairly trivial to just exclude those tools. And then just make sure you ask the questions when you see this stuff pop up. You can also just so you know, process creates, they log non-interactive sessions. So it's basically scripting that it gets. It's not who's on the keyboard and typing. So it's something that is often misunderstood. Things like, some of these commands in here are very, I would say, uncommon, specifically to a lot of the tools that I mentioned. Netgroup domain admins, believe it or not, is fairly uncommon for the vast breadth of tools that I've seen. There may be one tool that I've seen use it. And then other than that, it's, admins, domain admins doing things. But as far as like a automated tool, NetGroup domain admins, you should be looking at. NL test is wow, my brain just went pop. Netlog on test. And then system info and who am I? There's so many things out there that's just kind of their con ops, that they'll just go in there and, as soon as they get into a box, system info, who am I? And if you ever see your web server with your W3 WP process asking who am I, you are having a bad day. You just haven't quite figured that out yet. So then, like I said, stay calm and protect. And the protection part, this is where, you can detect everything, you have all the logs, but if you don't have the ability to stop something, then you just have a front row seat at a train wreck. And you're going, hey, look, that's ransomware. Oh, wow. Okay, that happened. And we can see when it happened. But, if you don't have a protective mechanism then you're not stopping it from happening. You're just watching it. So the most effective single protective measure that you can apply is a good endpoint detection and response tool, an EDR. And while preparing for this, I was kind of looking at other slides, things like that. And I saw Jordan and Kent's talk about using Defender, Advanced Threat Protection, MS Defender for Identity, and they were using it with Sentinel. And I 100% concur with those observations that they made, that Windows Defender and ATP is an unfortunate set of letters that I keep transposing. I wonder why. But the reasons are that it's not just because they did such a good job with it, but the vendor also built the operating system. And what we see way too often are how many agents that are out there. And there are ways you can have a bunch of tools out there with agents, and you can configure them to have exceptions for each other. It is very uncommon to see that level of due diligence in the configurations. What we normally see is the agents versus agents in a death match. And, it's the, I see the McAfee agent. I see, you've got, whatever your other agents are out there. And so one of the tools are either blind or they're screaming false positives like crazy. And this is something that year after year after year, when the answer is always, we'll buy that other thing, and it's agent based, it's just kind of a facepalm moment. So it's one of the reasons I really like the Defender. I keep wanting to say ATP, but they've rebranded it MS Defender for Identity, is because that agent seemed to mesh well with the operating system. It did not seem to have a lot of high CPU usage or memory that got out of hand like a lot of other agents did. And it seemed like it was meshed quite well. I will caution that it does still fire on keywords. So if you are doing cybersecurity as a job and you happen to have lots of files with lots of keywords, because things like detections, it will fire on that. But again, that should be fairly uncommon. And just like everything out there, they all require tuning. They all require sustainment. If you think it's plug and play, it's not going to do you a lot of good. Which you definitely get what you pay for. And not every group's willing to write that check. There are other good EDR products out there, but there's also a lot of really bad ones. Repackaging PowerShell scripts and Sysmon seems to be the way to achieve a very quick cash grab, but I personally wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I tried to sell something like that. There's quite a bit of products out there that's exactly what they are. But no matter what EDR you go with, you've got to have the personnel assigned to it to keep it fed, to keep it tuned, and to keep it lean and keep it effective, because the last thing you want is a lot of unwanted noise. So the second thing to do is to make sure that we take some of the teeth out of ransomware by protecting the master boot record. Microsoft published a really great set of recommendations when they did in their Whispergate report. And I've got the link in here that was the link in the report for the recommendation. If you can protect the access to the master boot record, then you're well on your way of some good practices against ransomware. The other side of that is having a data strategy, which we'll get to in a minute. But make sure that you're not just giving away access to your MBR. So also preventing unauthorized software installs. That's another thing that when it's well configured and consistently sustained, then an application whitelisting solution really does hit above its weight. Unfortunately, most of the attempts that I've seen have been in log mode, or they'll be in a learning mode, and it's not in enforce mode because there's a lot of work, and there's actually a lot of fear when you put it in enforce mode that it's going to break things. But that's where having small test groups, small user acceptance groups, tune it again, make sure that you've got all the rules in place. And if the rules are set as restrictive as possible and not as permissive as possible, then it is a very effective tool. Unfortunately, if there's it's all based on the due diligence and the personality of whoever's in charge of it. If they don't want to be reminded that they blocked something, they may just open it wide open. And that's across the industry, a very lazy thing that I've witnessed way too many times, and it makes a tool basically not effective. But when it comes to application whitelisting, if you can control what DLLs are loaded into memory and what software is installed, it is not a 100% solution. But what it does is it takes away a lot of tools that attackers use. And you are at least forcing them into some other known tools. Any of these things can be bypassed. But the more you do with rigor, then you have defense in depth, and you're forcing your attacker into very certain lanes to be able to evade them. And if you understand your toolkits, like MITRE had some tests out there with all sorts of EDR products and all sorts of different things. And they listed what it saw, what it prevented, what it saw, and what it didn't see at all. And so if you know where the holes are, then you know how to fill them as needed. And that becomes your priority. If the tool that you're using misses things like, WMI, then make sure that you focus on WMI detections in another way through those logs that are coming in. But it's basically, you need the entire solution that is not based on any one thing. So when I first created this talk, this was before Log4j, and this was, everybody says, okay, well, this time it's new. This is something that's completely different than anything we've ever seen before. really? So, let's see if some of these best practices were put in place. If you've got firewall rules that are deny all, allow by exception, if you've got, kind of the ability to just detect the common commands that are done, if you know what software you've got, then if you had limited what is exposed to the internet and removed all your unused software, set up basic logging, what difference would that have made? By prepared by doing the hard work of configuration management, patching, day-to-day sustainment, task that removes accounts when people leave, those kind of things would have set you up at the beginning of this in a very good position. And also, if you're already doing your patching on a regular basis, all of your sustainment, then, hey, look, it's this new CVE that just came out. We have, within a week, there'll be patches already. Then you already know your routine for, putting in maybe an authorized service interruption window if you need to, whatever those processes are for your organization, you've been practicing them. So it's just hey, we've got some patching to do because that's the number one way that we stop against this, as far as making sure that it doesn't execute. But even then, while you're waiting for that to happen, we see, things like this string that I've got in here with JNDI LDAP. This was what we saw. You've either got a domain in there or you've got an IP that it's going to go out to. So if you had Zeek set up ahead of time, and as what Derek covers in his training, if you have all your logs set up ahead of time, then you're not blind to what is happening right then. You can then pivot over to those logs and you can look and see, okay, if it's a domain in there, do I see DNS logs where that domain had an attempted resolution? And then also, if you're running Rita, since I know that this is a heavy Black Hills group here, if you're running Rita, there's an awesome piece in Rita that looks at number of unique subdomains in your DNS records. That's something that could indicate a domain generation algorithm, things like that are, you didn't even need to know that there was a vulnerability. When you start seeing those things pop up, you're like, hey, this is not normal. So you're already set up for success, even with this brand new vulnerability that just, dropped out on the world around, just like the last few right around Christmas time. Appreciate that. So, if you see a direct IP in there, you can check your Zeek con logs. If you don't have Zeek set up, you can check, if you have Sysmon set up, it's Event ID 3, you check your firewall logs, things like that to see if something's on the way out. And it's, that way you at least know, was it successful? Because everybody got scanned. There were a lot of pieces of infrastructure out there that were scanning all known IPs, and not just scanning, I would say attempting these kinds of attacks. And it was vast in numbers. So pretty much if you had something that was public facing since, December through whenever, you're seeing these kind of logs in your system where things are making these attempts. But, do you have it set up to where LDAP can leave your enclave? Should it be able to? Maybe it should, but if it should, maybe you should know the scope of what it's talking to. Maybe you've got some cloud infrastructure. I don't know what the positive use cases are off the top of my head, but I don't want to say, oh, you should never do this. This is bad, because every time I say that, I find out there's another technology out there that does it on purpose. But there's always ways to make exceptions with bounds, left and right bounds, saying, okay, we'll allow this traffic to this specific IP set, things like that. So let's talk about stuff. When I was in college, I worked in computer labs, and this will show my age a little bit. I can't count the number of times that students lost a paper they've been working on for days and days and days because it only existed on that one single floppy disk that they went to the computer lab. This was before everybody had a computer in their dorm room. But when the disk becomes corrupted, they lost their work. And it was, quite a very emotionally impacting a series of events for somebody whose paper is due the next day. especially grad students working on thesis and, all on just saved in one place on their disk. So that just seemed to be a Groundhog Day in and of itself of day after day. Well, that turned into, hey, I moved into the professional world, working in an office, IT stuff, and coworkers losing all of their work when help desk just reimage their machine, because it's a lot easier just reimage it than figure out what was wrong. Unfortunately, that's still kind of the paradigm out there in a lot of places, is if it takes more than 15 minutes to figure it out, then you get reimaged. But if you can't fix that, you can at least fix, did you really have this saved only in one place? So like your stuff, it's this paradigm is the same thing when it comes to ransomware and loss of data. If you store your stuff in the same place, then it has a lot more risk. For years, we've talked about backup strategies and backup and restore, and cloud's added a lot of risk transference to this kind of discussion, but the fundamentals are still the same. And you have to identify what is the data that's of value to you. Is it your formulas? Is it your schematics, records in a database? You got these other customer records. There's a lot of data out there that represents the value to business. And the tools and the systems that generate that data or that store it, that use it for processing, in many cases are the things that can be just blown away, rebuilt, not a problem. But it's the data itself that really matters. And that's where it bridges away from the old school, just backup and restore strategy. Because things like, if you have ransomware and it has time to get into something, then you're backing that up as well. And again, that's kind of probably a deep enough topic for its own discussion. So the data itself should have a strategy that is independent from the systems and the tools. So your data strategy, like I said, this is something that it would be a good talk by itself, but I'm going to move on by providing one really good example. How's that for clickbait? So I went on a photography workshop back in February to Lofoten Islands in Norway. And, it was a wonderful group. It was just an amazing experience. And during a meal, somebody asked me basically what I did. And it's very difficult to describe cyber defense in ways that don't sound kind of crazy. So my response, I asked them, how do you keep your raw files safe from previous shoots? And I'm referring to people with, cameras that have SD cards in them. The camera, when you take a picture, it writes in a raw binary format that then it takes an interpreter to turn that into an image. And that's where things like Lightroom and all these other tools, post-processing tools, come into play. But the raw, most of the really hardcore photographers that are out there don't shoot in JPEG, they shoot in RAW. And these are large files. The example I've got with the image here, the Sony A7 R4 is 61 megapixels. So that's 61 meg per shot. And so that can add up. So storage becomes an issue. So when I asked those photographers, how do you preserve your raw images from previous shoots? They all got excited. This was a subject that was near and dear to all of their hearts, and they all had their own solutions and they wanted to share them, and this became its own discussion. So if you know photographers out there, even if you are one, or you find out somebody's real big into photography, ask them that question and then just listen. You're going to hear about storing external drives in safety deposit box. You're going to hear about cloud backup solutions from Adobe and Carbonite and things like that. You'll hear some people shoot a new SD card for every shoot, and then they pull the raw images off into their post-processing platform, and then they take those cards and then they inventory those and by themselves. The permutations are vast. Most understand they have to protect from loss due to fire, flooding, other natural disasters, not just data loss due to corruption and theft. But if you listen, they have a plan. And most photographers, they have no idea that this concept is so hard to implement in other technology sectors. because this is something that matters a lot to them. They don't need any of the jargon. They don't know any, the people that I was talking to had no idea that this is a core concept in cyber defense is, having a data strategy and being able to protect your data. To them, it was just part of photography and making sure that they kept, their old work and that it would be accessible to them in the future. So we can strip away all the fancy words and the problems are still the problems. And those problems transcend all of our frameworks, and every single business out there that's really passionate about what they do, we can talk to them in their own language, and we can find out, we can either help them come up with strategies on how to preserve their data, or we can listen and find out new things. But either way, this is a great example of having a data strategy. And you'll hear a lot of rants and a lot of YouTube videos about why this is still a problem today. Why is it a problem about having data corruption on, this kind of media in 2022? Well, instead of just getting hung up on it, manufacturers like Sony created a camera that when you take a picture, it can write to both those cards at the same time. Or you can use all the different menus and options available to transfer and copy from one card to the other. They basically have it set up to where you have two pieces of media, and we'll give you all the ability, the capability to do whatever you want in whatever combination of things to fit your paradigm, to fit your strategy. And that's kind of cool that the camera manufacturer went, you've all got different ways you want to do this. We just want to support that capability. So you've got the manufacturers and photographers that just didn't get hung up in the fact that this shouldn't be a problem. They came up with solutions. And it comes down to it. This is what a data strategy is. This is what redundancy means when it comes to data. And, if something like ransomware hit their computer, grabbed their Lightroom catalog images and everything else, they'll go, okay, drop that thing in the trash can, go buy another one, install Lightroom, and go to my safety deposit box, pull out that external hard drive. There's my pictures, that kind of thing. They're not going to be paying a ransom. That's something that's very, very important. Is yes, backup and restore strategy is key to ransomware recovery. Absolutely. And it's not just taking a snapshot and then a snapshot a day later and a snapshot a day later. There's a lot of ransomware would just sit and bake and wait until, wait for something else to trigger it. So that way you can't just restore from the past. So it's got to be more nuanced. Absolutely. So let's talk about people. Users are conditioned to what becomes normal. If they always have to click through pop-ups and errors when the EDR or security tool really needs them to actually pay attention, there's very little chance of that happening because we are all Pavlov's dog when it comes to conditioning. So fix your stuff, activate products, even in a lab, do what you need to do. There's a lot of times where there's an internal site that's HTTP and oh my goodness, it's just too difficult to use HTTPS on that. Use this, come on, fix it, make it to where you can use HTTPS, make it to where users don't have to click through pop-ups and error messages all day long, because what you're doing is you're conditioning them. And then if you have a security tool that says, hey, are you sure? Because frankly, a lot of security tools need to ask that question and not just block business. So it's a good reason to not just have them fully block it, because that's a risk that most businesses won't accept. But at least empower your users to have a chance by not conditioning them to click through all of the errors. Fix the environment. So that's something that's a people problem. That is 100% a people problem and not a technology problem. Also, there's always a link in the email. We live in a cloud-based world. We live in a world with distributed systems. There's always a link in the email. Being able to train your users of what is expected and what is not is an ongoing challenge. But the 100% truth is that blaming the user is never a good way forward. Because if the user clicks on something in the email frankly, any good social engineer out there can get anybody. None of us are ever immune. None of us are 100%, you're never going to get me. Well, that's just hubris, because we're all human beings. We all make mistakes. And frankly, it's not that much of a mistake the way modern, distributed systems are. It's very difficult to see a very well done campaign about, oh, the user shouldn't have clicked that. I'm not talking about the things that are just like phoned in from like cheap social engineering tools, but like the legitimate phishing emails, the illegitimate phishing emails that go out there. Some of them are quite good right now. So being able to train your users in what is normal and what is not, like I said, I think that's more challenging now than it was 5 years ago, but it's still something that we have to do. And it's still, it's still needed. And that's going to be organization to organization. It's not something that there's a one size fits all solution, other than the fact that it seems like everybody now is using Microsoft 365. And there's a lot of good tools that are built into that. Some of them you have to pay Microsoft some additional licensing money for, but it's possible to work through the problem. But the first part is what does normal look like, and don't blame the user. So anti-patterns or actually I should say design patterns are something that came out of software engineering. Back in the 90s, somebody wrote a book. I think it was 4 people, and I don't remember the name of the book. I probably should have looked that up first. But I think it was 4 people that put together a book that came up with these design patterns that really work for software engineering and how you plan your work and then work your plan. And shortly after that came out the anti-patterns. And anti-patterns are depressingly fun. So this is the quote of what an anti-pattern is the anti-pattern is a commonly used process, structure, or pattern of action that, despite initially appearing to be an appropriate and effective response to a problem, has more bad consequences than good ones. There's a lot of things that fit into this. The one I want to talk about is the hero anti-pattern. And this is something that especially small businesses, small and mid-size, and even large businesses, this is all too common, where you have a high performer. And that high performer, if it's a network engineer, if it's a systems person, if it's a business analyst, it doesn't matter. If it's somebody that this is the person that we toss the problems to because they always get it fixed and they're going to get it done. And when that happens, they own it forever, because typically they do it in a one-off way. It's not done with community and team in mind. And when they find another job, you're back to where you started, and maybe worse. But it keeps getting used because, again, as the definition says, despite initially appearing to be appropriate and effective, because there's a lot of groups out there that are firefighters. They don't care about long-term planning. It's what is the fire of the day. And the most common answer to what is the fire of the day and how do we solve it is the hero anti-pattern. Throw it at the one person that can solve the problem, that can fix it, and then everybody can move on. Well, not everybody, because what you're doing is you're burning out your high performer. And the high performer ends up being overextended and frustrated, and typically you'll see attrition. And then it's not documented in most cases because you threw another problem at them before they could document it and pass this on to a team and turn it into a repeatable process. So there are other anti-patterns out there. And that link that I've got under the quote of what the definition is Wikipedia. There's a long list of these. And if you've been in the workforce for more than 5 years and had quite a few different jobs, different management groups, leadership or lack thereof, do not turn, if you've seen that or not, into a drinking game, because your liver will explode. It's basically a nice textbook of use cases of what not to do. So that's kind of the people piece of this, is that, it's sad because as an industry, there's a Wikipedia page out there of what not to do, and we still see it. day in and day out. So if you have the ability, if you run teams, if you run management, be humble, take a look at these, make sure you're not doing them. And that is the best top level, high level guidance that you're going to get of how to prevent problems. But it takes some humility. It takes understanding that, maybe there's some growth that can be done. And I just went all the way back. So that's most of the material here. Now I'm going to open it up for questions. So I see we've got chat in here, but I don't see anything in the Q&A right now. So let's see. I think I saw at the beginning of this, the one just to use the Q&A section of Zoom, but I'm also now looking at the live chat in Discord as well. So in the meantime, any of the other panelists want to chime in and ask any questions or make any comments? But we're waiting on any questions.
Hi there. I was just kind of scrolling back through to see if I saw any questions. Let's see.
Here we go.
Stephen, this was a great talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, it's interesting because when I first came up with a lot of these concepts of hey, we seem to have the same day over and over again. It's kind of cool because it was like 9 or 10 months ago. And then as time has gone on, it's just been like validating those concepts. Yep. Yeah. That, hey, look, that's new. No, it's not. So it's kind of fun. But it's become like the movie to where instead of being depressed by it, handling it in the way that Bill Murray does in the movie, towards the end of the movie, it's okay, well, what this has done is this prepared me to be able to answer this question with confidence and with calm instead of it being hair on fire. Immediately when Log4j came out, it was like, hey, somebody's got a list of the things that are bad. Now it's like immediately the right response instead of being like, oh crap, it's brand new. What do we do? So that was, like I said, validating.
Well, good stuff. Absolutely good stuff. Megan, are you seeing any?
Yeah, I was just looking. I know I had seen a question, but I forgot to stay there.
It's also fun that basically this is saying that this picks up where Derek's training stops.
Well, that's awesome.
So yeah, I would recommend that training that Derek was talking about beforehand, 100%, because that's kind of what I was indicating in here is you got to be set up for success.
And that's extremely important. And I love the fact that this talk piggybacked off of Derek's training unintentionally. This was something that we didn't plan, and then to have it kind of do that was really good in my book. So
yeah, I am not seeing any. I'm scrolling back to the newer messages now. If you had a question or anyone had a question previously and you didn't get a response, please make sure you re-ask it if you didn't get a response.
So Wallace and I spent a lot of time in the webinar gesticulating at my screen and saying exactly. So we love seeing those kind of comments, right? I mean, it's good to know that we're bringing a lot of value and again, helping you with those things, the aha moments, so to speak, I guess, or the things that you can say exactly to. So it's good to see that kind of feedback and to know that we're providing a good service here.
Right. And as a community, as I'm seeing in the Discord here as well, I'm not saying anything new, even with all of this. There's so many people out there that have been in the industry that they've experienced this as well. And it's not a unique experience for me. It's a very common experience. And it's something that maybe it makes it helpful for people who are newer into the industry. And hopefully, some of the entities that could cause problems, kind of what this pointed out, could look at this and go, hey, let me take a step back, and see that this is something that is very common and maybe help my business prevent these kind of problems.
And that's what's so important about sharing this knowledge, right? I mean, it's these type of webcasts and giving your knowledge to others, sharing your knowledge, is just so important. And it's it is helping other people in the industry. It's helping those newbies. It's helping those organizations take a look at things a little differently. So I think it's an awesome talk. This will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and take a listen to it again, if there's something in there that you wanted to hear again, it will be listed on the Wild West Hackin Fest YouTube channel after this talk is completed. Please feel free to share it. It is okay. So Ryan says the webcast is live streamed and recorded on YouTube.
Yep.
And he lists a link in the Zoom chat, but let me see if I can grab that here and put that in. He already did it. Never mind.
Also,
He's like magic.
I did look in the actual Zoom Q&A, and it does look like there is a question there that is, what would your roadmap be for a new company that never had security?
I would say that there's actually a lot of good tools out there. Again, I think some of the training that Derek was putting in there, that sounds like, now I've not done that training, and I'm not a Black Hills employee, so this is totally unsolicited. But everything he was saying, it really does. It resonated for the how do you set yourself up for success. Don't focus on buying the most expensive thing out there. There's a lot of things you can do without spending a lot of money. The money that you're going to spend is on your labor force make sure that you support your employees to do these kinds of things for you. And then it's storage is fairly cheap these days, but those are the things. Don't try to solve the most complex problems. Solve the common problems. If we're still seeing the same discovery commands now as we did 10 years ago, don't worry about the crazy awesome pen tester that can evade everything. That's an edge case. Get your foundation right first. That's what I would recommend for a company that's never had security stood up. Also, security is, you got to look at, don't spend so much on high-end products when your return on investment isn't there. You need to understand how much things cost. What is your business? Is availability the thing that matters the most? If your business, your sites go down for 6 hours, can you put a cost number to that? And then if you can't, focus on that as well. It's because maybe your products are all being sold through third-party instances like eBay and Amazon and Etsy. And if your site goes down, your revenue is not as big of a hit, but that's just where people go to look for more information. So knowing where your revenue streams are and what is your stuff that you need to secure, like those are the first questions you ask as a new company that has never done security before, is where do I need to focus my resources?
Another person asked, what are some of the internal ways you track these Groundhog Day moments so we can respond faster, better the next time around?
Liver damage. Really, it's lessons learned is a big thing. And if you're using a community, being able to collaborate in a community and have the ability, especially if you're doing defensive cyber, you need to be able to have a community that you're collaborating with, even if it's just your team itself, to make sure that you're documenting what your lessons learned are.
Well,
awesome.
That sounds, that's a really awesome idea and plan. And thank you again so much for coming on in the evening, your evening. We really appreciate it. It was a really great talk. It's so cool how it totally dovetailed into Derek's training that's coming up. So it's really important information, and we're just so happy that we get to share this with the community.
Yes, Stephen, you know what? Great stuff. We really appreciate you. Would love to have you come on again if you're interested in the future. Please.
I'm interested in going to the convention in person and being able to meet all of you.
Please.
That's what I'm interested in.
we've got one coming up in Deadwood. Well, are you going to be back in the States anytime soon, or?
I'm probably going to go to South Dakota to change my state residency, and sounds like going to the Deadwood conference matches up quite well with that.
Oh,
Well,
perfect.
We would love to host you, Stephen. So I will shoot you an email with dates, and we'll go forward from there.
Sounds perfect.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was a great talk, and great opportunity for many people. So thanks again, and everybody have a great day today.
Before we close, Velda, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say about the certificate of completion. So for those of you who joined through Zoom, not through YouTube directly, but through Zoom, you will get a cert of completion tomorrow around this time. And it's from Gutenberg. So it kind of looks a little fishy, but it is not. It is from us, and it will be an hour CPE credit that you can use towards your certifications. So sorry to interrupt.
Not a problem. I just wanted to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, tomorrow.
From our team to all of you, enjoy. And just a reminder, we have a webcast next week with our good friends, Kevin Johnson and Nathan Sweeney. And it's always interesting. So please watch for that email, as well as go to our website and sign up. We will see you then. Thanks, everyone.
See you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.